Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Java. It's Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. Let's get right into it. There's quite a bit going on. We've got our favored risk indicator up just above 300. So we are in extreme areas again. The two main elements of it, the relative dollar strength is below the 106 right now and holding, and the 10-year yield is at 4.582. So we've got Treasury sales going on today. We will be watching those. But at the moment, it's kind of the sentiment is neutral to positive ahead of this auction. We've watched actually the VIX is coming down, volatility index, kind of the fear indicator, and the price of gold again at 1969.80. It's below that 2000. And the price of oil is retracing. So we're going to go over a bit of that. Futures are looking a bit towards the negative side, though, so there's going to be a little bit of volatility today. We'll see what happens, and I'll go over some of the factors. So one of the larger things that they're watching is the 10-year Treasury yields, because they've got quite a large auction going on. I believe that's at 1 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern time. So they really want to see how this auction goes. If they sell off well, this could affect that 10-year yield more than the interest rate hike. So now, since they've paused, it's kind of up to Janet Yellen, of all people. So in the calendar, for the most part, it's Federal Reserve presidents that are speaking today. We've got Cook in the morning, Powell talking, and then later on in the afternoon, we've got Barr and Jefferson. I believe Williams is also speaking today, if I'm not mistaken. The only number we're really expecting is wholesale inventories at 10 a.m. So kind of light on the calendar. I also put in tomorrow morning the initial jobless claims because it's prior to market open. So we will be watching those things. We do have earnings today for Disney and a couple of others, but overall not anything much larger. Really watching that Treasury auction. So for the banks, getting into what's going on, the central banks have gone on a record gold buying binge. So for this past year up to this point, they've been buying gold like no tomorrow. And this is all because of the inflation and everything else going on. The kind of the wars, the trades kinds of pushed them into this gold purchasing for their assets. So this is something that it's the fear trade because they don't make any real interest or anything when you purchase gold. Same reasons we buy precious metals is to hold the value and kind of stabilize it. So it is feared trade. We've got little news. I wanted to bring this up. As Maui is recovering, Hawaii's leading banks, namely Bank of Hawaii is one I wanted to bring up, they are kind of showing themselves a bit of recovery. So even though their earnings were down, they're actually doing okay. And I do have to do a disclaimer. None of this is financial advice. You have to do your own research. But I do have a relative, pretty high up executive at Bank of Hawaii. So not giving any advice on that at all, as it would be unethical. So we've got some newly delinquent credit card users now top pre-pandemic levels. So we've been talking about this for a while. Basically, credit card users, because people are out of money, they have drained their savings. And so now they're charging it up between credit cards and also companies like Affirm. We've been talking about this for a while, and it's not just America. Now they're talking about Brits, how they're going to do their holiday shopping with buy now, pay later deals. And those are the same, speaking of same companies, Affirm, I believe SoFi also does this. There's a few others that are basically work like credit card companies. You do an instant finance. So moving on, because we've got a lot to cover. We've got, as I was saying, oil prices that kind of retreated. So they just dropped their lowest levels since July. It's kind of showing in the charts they did need to do a pullback. They've still got a little bit farther to come back, but they're consolidating. So I don't expect this to last. Moving forward, oil prices, possibly before the end of the year, will make a recovery. And when they do, they affect inflation. So I do expect inflation to come back, even though we're in a bit of a pullback at the moment. Another story is about beef prices hitting a record high because they're talking about drought. So we've still got these inflation pressures in real measures, even though they're saying it's coming down. So it is in some areas, but it's very, very mixed. So for real estate, we had a bit of a controversial story because they're talking about Ping An as a company. They're an insurance company. And Reuters reported that they were going to take over this developer, the one that is claiming bankruptcy, and they're not as large as Evergrande. However, they're very large, and I think they're second largest in China for a developer, real estate developer in China. And they're talking about an insurance company taking over. If they did, that would be very positive because they wouldn't have to liquidate a good portion of things going on like Evergrande will on a bankruptcy case. So going back over to the United States, the local market rates came down. And so that's kind of spinning people into being able to get mortgages again, qualifying again, because that small amount makes a huge difference. And then home purchases, just hopefully when this gears back up, it doesn't go at too rapid of a rate. So it's really the concern. So in trade and currency, we've got a couple of stories here. Baidu is a tiny Chinese tech giant, and they are now ordering their chips from Huawei locally, even though they're inferior chips to NVIDIA. The sanctions that the US has put on them, now they're finding different ways. And it's kind of the same thing, shooting themselves in the foot by sanctioning China. Now it's dropping the sales that NVIDIA has had. So we're going to watch for a washout from that. We've also got global asset managers. They're now bullish on China. They've basically shifted their policy. Instead of doing a global trade view of manufacturing and exporting, now they're trying to build their sales internally, local economy, basically. They're also considering doing their trade settlements in services and commodities. We've been talking about this for a while. They've got the e-yuan in place, and now they're they're setting up to trade with the e-ruble with Russia as well as the other BRICS nations with these electronic settlements outside of the US dollar. So we'll be watching that as well. US Treasury also has been watching other currencies. As I told you, we are in currency war, have been for some time. So they watch the trading partners for all of the other currencies. And with this, they just put Vietnam onto the monitoring list that they've got, and they took off Switzerland and South Korea. So they're watching any major moves they make in trade as far as buying, selling their own bonds, and how they manipulate their currencies. So here's another story I wanted to bring up because I think this is going to be important moving forward, not just for wars, but for the trades. From Tehran, they are now negotiating directly with Havana. So we've got Cuba and Iran making direct trade agreements, basically. So the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Trade and the Foreign Investment of Cuba making talks about expansion on bilateral ties. So this is going to get very interesting as Mogimi and Gabrises do these talks. And Cuba is right off the US coast, as many of you know. So keep an eye on that. For a couple of lava updates, wanted to bring up, we've got a few people that watched this from Australia, and I want to know if you are actually affected by this. They were talking about Optus as their second largest provider there, basically mobile phone network and internet. So it was out for some of the larger areas. They were talking about even some of the cities, Melbourne, causing delays with their trains and other things. So looking at the impact of that and seeing if there's something else behind it, it's a little suspect. So I'm waiting to see what they say was the cause of it and then dig a little deeper. With this, we've also got a kind of on the crypto front, we've got the Internal Revenue Service. They're insisting that there be some surveillance element put into this. The Justice Department is saying that it's absolutely critical that they have the power to seize cryptocurrency from Americans, the ability to seize the assets. And they're saying even if a judge does not sign off, basically moving outside of warrants and outside of the law, basically, it's constitutionally incorrect, and we're going to keep an eye on this because that could be it's a larger deal than it seems on the surface. I also wanted to bring up one other thing, and this is the Ben Gurion Canal. So this is basically a different canal they're looking at building to be an alternate to the Suez, and it would basically change a trade route, create something else there. And I just want to get in the comments if any of you have heard of this. Also, leaving the link up here in case you have more interest to reading a little bit more about it and possibly having a discussion. So let me know your thoughts on that as well. With that, if you haven't liked this video yet and you do, please remember, click that like. It does help me out tremendously. And I wish you all a green trading day, just wonderful day in general, of course. Until I see you again, stay free.